Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take a really dense stack of information and boil it down to what you really need to know.
Yeah, get right to the core of it.
And today we're opening up a truly complex file. It's about a woman, Blanche Taylor Moore, whose life was just full of these extreme contradictions, often lethal ones.
It's a fascinating case, psychologically speaking,
Right.
because it really shows how someone can build this outward image of piety, of religious devotion,
Right.
and use that as, well, perfect camouflage for calculated, systematic murder. Our goal here, our mission in this deep dive, is to really track the path of Blanche Kaiser, that was her maiden name, born in Concord, North Carolina, back in 1933.
Okay.
We want to understand not just that she became a convicted killer, but how. How she used that persona, the daughter of an ordained Baptist minister, the trusted head cashier at Kroger, how she used all that to carry out this pattern of slow burn arsenic poisoning.
Slow burn. Yeah, a method almost designed to avoid detection, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Right.
Designed to defeat forensic science, especially back then.
And that facade, that pious image, it seems like it was a bit shaky even early on, which makes the fact she kept it up for so long and did what she did even more shocking.
Yeah, the sources really capture that. They mentioned she was known to switch, instantly. 1 minute quoting scripture, the next minute talking about really explicit sexual topics. That kind of conversational whiplash, it does suggest something unstable, maybe fractured, lurking just beneath that conventional surface.
So where does that instability come from? Let's look at her early life.
Well, the roots might be in her childhood. Her parents were Parker Davis Kaiser. He was a mill worker, but also an ordained Baptist minister, and Flonnie Blanche Kaiser. So on the outside, religious respectability.
Right. The preacher's daughter image.
But Blanche later made some incredibly disturbing claims about her father. Really dark stuff. She alleged he was an alcoholic, a womanizer,
Okay.
and that he actually forced her into prostitution to pay off his gambling debts.
Wow. Okay, that's a devastating claim. If it's true, that certainly paints a picture of intense trauma, maybe fueling some deep resentment or distrust, especially towards men later in her life.
It absolutely could. And this kind of tumultuous background, whether entirely true or her perception, it seems to almost foreshadow the pattern of, suspicious deaths that start cropping up later.
Yeah, let's talk about that. The first one.
The first death that, when you look back with hindsight, really seems like the blueprint for her later methods. It's her father, Parker Davis Kaiser. He died in 1966.
And how was it reported at the time?
As a heart attack. Sudden, seemed natural enough. Nobody suspected anything, at least not officially.
So that's the blueprint, isn't it? A quick, believable diagnosis heart attack that covers up what might have been a slow poisoning. It's a method she could, and apparently did, use again.
Precisely. You could almost say it trained her evasion. She learned that a sudden death, especially in someone middle-aged or older, maybe with some prior health issues, it would almost always be chalked up to cardiac failure or maybe a stroke, unless someone had a specific reason to suspect foul play and really dig into it.
Which they usually wouldn't, not without a clear motive staring them in the face.
Okay, so let's bridge this gap. We have this claimed turbulent childhood, potentially abusive. How does she transition into this seemingly stable, conventional adult life, the retail world phase?
Right, because for decades, she really projected this image of total stability. In 1952, she marries James Napoleon Taylor. He was a Korean War veteran, worked as a furniture restorer. They had 2 kids together. Then, just 2 years later, in 1954, she gets a job as a cashier at the local Kroger grocery store. And she wasn't just average, she was good at it, reliable, competent. By 1959, she's promoted to head cashier. And head cashier, like you mentioned, that was basically the glass ceiling for women in that kind of company back then. So this shows she was ambitious, capable within that system, a stable working mom involved in her church community.
Exactly. The picture of normalcy. But then, the cracks start showing again. By 1962, the sources say she began an affair with the store manager, a guy named Raymond Reed.
Ah, okay. And this brings us closer to the first death that would later be confirmed as murder, right? Her husband, James Taylor.
That's right. Fast forward to October 2nd, 1973. James Taylor dies. And the reported cause of death.
Let me guess. Heart attack.
Heart attack. Just like her father, 7 years earlier. She successfully replicated that non-suspicious diagnosis.
It's chilling how effective it was. Heart attack, heart attack. And it works because arsenic, especially given slowly over time, it messes with your whole system, right? Gastrointestinal problems, nerve damage, vomiting.
Exactly. Symptoms that can look like a whole bunch of natural illnesses and eventually catastrophic organ failure, which often gets labeled, cardiac arrest. Easy cover.
So James Taylor dies in 73. What happens with Raymond Reed, the store manager she was having the affair with?
After Taylor's death, their relationship becomes public. They dated openly for years, right into the mid-1980s. But by 1985, that long-term relationship had soured. And this is where we see Blanche's knack for, let's say, strategic manipulation really take a dramatic and very costly turn.
Yeah, this part is wild. She starts deploying these complex legal and maybe even psychological strategies. So Reed relationship ends, and by 1985, the sources say she's dating another Kroger manager, a regional manager named Robert J. Hutton.
Right. But that relationship apparently didn't last long either. And when it ended, Blanche didn't just walk away. In October 1985, she filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against Hutton and against Kroger.
And what was the immediate fallout from that?
It was pretty significant. Hutton was forced to resign his position, and Kroger, probably wanting to avoid a messy public battle.
Sure, bad PR.
They settled the case out of court 2 years later, in 1987. And the settlement amount, $275,000.
Wow. That's a huge amount of money back then. That basically set her up financially, didn't it?
Absolutely. Gave her financial independence. But while this legal maneuvering is happening, there's other strange stuff going on.
The fires.
Yeah, the fires. In 1985, the same year she filed the lawsuit, she claimed some unknown pervert set 2 different fires that badly damaged her mobile home.
Okay, a pervert. But some sources suggest otherwise.
Well, the author of the book Preacher's Girl, which came out later, suggested that maybe Moore actually set up Hutton in that lawsuit. And maybe she set those fires herself, intentionally.
Why would she do that? Insurance money. Or something else.
Could be insurance. Or, if you entertain the idea she's this calculating operator, maybe she was trying to create chaos, distract people, or even destroy potential evidence related to something else. Maybe linked to Raymond Reed, who, remember, is about to get sick himself around this time.
So it shifts the picture from just a black widow after insurance to someone capable of complex decoys, legal and physical. She's managing her image, her finances, very intensely.
It certainly suggests that possibility. The successful lawsuit, the big payout in 87, it solidifies her finances and maybe even paints her publicly as a victim.
Right, which could be useful cover.
Exactly. And that status might have helped her move on to her next target. Which brings us to Section 3, the final target and the unraveling.
Okay, who's the final target?
It starts innocently enough, like these things often do. Easter Sunday, she meets Dwight Moore. He's a divorced pastor leading the Carolina United Church of Christ. Seems like a new beginning, maybe a return to that pious life she projected.
A pastor? But wait, there's a problem with her dating anyone publicly right then, isn't there? Because of the lawsuit.
Exactly. This is crucial. She had to keep this new relationship with Dwight completely secret. Why? Because the whole basis of her successful lawsuit against Kroger, the one that got her that $250,000, rested on her claim that she was, and this is a quote, completely alienated and antagonistic towards men and has not been able to maintain any meaningful social contacts with the opposite sex.
Oh, wow. So if anyone found out she was happily dating a pastor...
Her whole claim of psychological damage would crumble. The lawsuit money could even be at risk. The level of deceit needed there, courting a pastor while claiming total alienation from men, it just highlights her incredible ability to compartmentalize and manipulate.
It really does. And while she's pulling off this secret courtship, she makes a very specific, very chilling request, doesn't she?
Yes. While dating Dwight, the man she apparently plans to marry, she asks him to get her some arsenic-based ant killer.
The sheer audacity. Asking your future husband, a pastor no less, to get you the poison. But hang on, the timeline here. This is around 1987, 1988. If she's involved with Dwight, what's happening with Raymond Reed, the ex-boyfriend? He hasn't just vanished.
No, he hasn't. And this is important. Raymond Reed, the guy she dated publicly for over a decade after her first husband died, he actually started developing symptoms back in 1986, before she even asked Dwight for the arsenic.
Okay, so Reed gets sick before the Dwight relationship really kicks off.
Right. His initial diagnosis was shingles. He ended up hospitalized in April 86 and died on October 7th, 1986. The initial cause of death listed was Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS.
GBS, that's a serious neurological disorder, right, where your immune system attacks your nerves.
Exactly. It often follows an infection, causes muscle weakness, numbness, paralysis. It can be devastating.
So how does that relate to arsenic?
This is where it gets insidious.
Yeah.
The symptoms can be incredibly similar. GBS causes peripheral neuropathy, nerve damage outside the brain and spinal cord.
Bro-
You get numbness, tingling, weakness,
Okay.
chronic or subacute arsenic poisoning. It causes the exact same kind of peripheral neuropathy and sensory problems.
So she found another perfect mimic, a rare, serious neurological disease that looks just like arsenic poisoning.
It seems that way. It was an incredibly effective disguise for the poison. Doctors focusing on viral or autoimmune causes for GBS wouldn't likely suspect a toxin unless they had a strong reason to. So Reed's death was attributed to GBS, and that was that. For a while.
Unbelievable. So Reed dies in '86 under the guise of GBS. She's secretly courting Dwight Moore. What happens next?
Well, despite all this Reed's death, the ongoing lawsuit fallout, the secret relationship, she and Dwight continue planning their wedding. But even that gets delayed. First, Blanche gets diagnosed with breast cancer in 1987. Then, in 1988, she develops some kind of mysterious intestinal ailment that needs 2 surgeries.
Given everything else, you almost have to wonder, were those illnesses genuine, or could they have been, I don't know, self-inflicted? Maybe low-level poisoning attempts where she was observing the symptoms?
The sources don't confirm that. It's speculation. But yeah, given the pattern, it does make you look sideways at any illness she reported around that time.
Yeah.
Did she know exactly what arsenic felt like?
A chilling thought. But eventually they do get married.
Yes, finally. April 19th, 1989, they tie the knot. They go on a honeymoon to New Jersey. But the marriage pretty much imploded immediately after. Just days after they got back from the honeymoon, Dwight collapsed. It happened right after he ate a fast food chicken sandwich that Blanche had given him.
The chicken sandwich, a classic poisoning method.
Seems like it.
Hmm.
He was rushed to the hospital on April 28th, 1989. His condition just plummeted, deteriorated rapidly, near death. He was transferred between hospitals as doctors scrambled to figure out what was wrong.
And this sudden, near-fatal collapse. This is what finally breaks the case open, right? This leads us to the forensics and the missed clues.
Exactly. This is section 4. Because Dwight, critically, survived. And he could talk.
What did he say that was so important?
He mentioned to the doctors that shortly after the honeymoon, he'd been working with some herbicide. Just an offhand comment, maybe.
Herbicide, which can contain arsenic, right?
Some do, yes. And that single detail, however small, was the trigger. It gave the doctors a specific direction.
Okay, so they weren't just guessing anymore. They had a potential toxin to look for.
Right. It prompted them to order a full toxicology screen, specifically checking for herbicide or pesticide poisoning. The results took a while to come back. But when they did, early 1990,
Yeah.
they were staggering.
How staggering?
March 13th, 1990. The results confirmed it. Dwight had 20 times the lethal dose of arsenic in his system.
20 times lethal dose, and he was still alive.
Barely. It was, according to the sources, the most arsenic ever found in a living patient in that hospital's history. It's almost unbelievable he survived. Doctors credited it to what they called a particularly robust constitution.
Wow. But survival wasn't without consequences, I assume.
No, not at all. He suffered permanent neurological damage, lost function in his hands and feet. And even as recently as 2010, the sources say he was still dealing with serious complications from the poisoning.
So Dwight survives. The toxicology confirms massive arsenic poisoning. How did investigators then link this back to the earlier deaths? Her father, her first husband.
Again, Dwight was the key. Even from his hospital bed, recovery was slow. But he remembered something crucial. He mentioned to investigators that Blanche's previous long-term boyfriend, Raymond Reed, had died from Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS.
The disease with the similar symptoms.
Exactly. That similarity, GBS and arsenic poisoning symptoms, immediately raised a huge red flag for the investigators. Suddenly, Reed's death didn't look so natural anymore.
That's the moment, isn't it, when they realize this might be a pattern, a signature, not just tragic coincidences.
Precisely. And they quickly found a motive, too. They discovered Blanche had already tried to change Dwight's pension and life insurance policies to make herself the main beneficiary.
So if he had died,
she stood to gain financially. That motive, combined with the pattern of deaths disguised as GBS or heart attacks, well, the focus landed squarely on Blanche.
Okay, so they suspect her. What were the immediate challenges in investigating arsenic poisoning, especially chronic poisoning?
One small detail shows how aware Blanche might have been about forensics. Arsenic gets deposited in keratin, your hair and nails.
Right, it creates a timeline of exposure.
Exactly. Knowing this, or suspecting it, Blanche had Dwight's head hair cut short before the State Bureau of Investigation, the SBI, could get a sample. She likely thought she was destroying the evidence trail.
Sneaky. But hair grows everywhere, doesn't it?
It does. Investigators couldn't get a good sample from his head hair, which shows recent exposure, but they were able to get pubic hair samples.
And that shows longer-term exposure.
That's right. Pubic hair grows slower, so it can reflect exposure over a longer period. The analysis of those samples proved the poisoning wasn't just a one-off thing with the chicken sandwich. It showed a consistent long-term pattern of arsenic exposure.
Which destroys any claim of accidental poisoning.
Completely. It pointed directly to chronic, intentional administration of arsenic.
With the pattern confirmed in Dwight and Reed's death now looking suspicious, the next logical step had to be exhumations.
Yes. Investigators got court orders to exhume the bodies of James Taylor, her first husband, Raymond Reed, and her father, Parker Davis Kaiser.
And the autopsies.
They confirmed elevated levels of arsenic in all three bodies. The amounts found in Reed and Taylor were clearly fatal, so their official causes of death were reclassified from heart attack and GBS to arsenic poisoning.
Case closed, right. But the sources mention a huge, almost unbelievable failure that happened back when Reed died in 1986.
Yeah. This part is just... it's devastating. The sources revealed that back in 1986, when Raymond Reed died at Baptist Hospital, the doctors had actually ordered a toxicology screen.
They did, so they suspected something.
Maybe. Yeah. Or maybe it was just thoroughness. But the screen was done.
Yeah.
And it came back showing extremely high levels of arsenic in Reed's system.
So they knew it was arsenic back in 1986. Why wasn't anything done?
This is the tragedy. It was a catastrophic failure of communication, a clerical nightmare. The resident physician who was handling Reed's care rotated out, went to another hospital on the very day the toxicology results came back.
No.
The results were filed, but the information wasn't passed on properly to the incoming resident or the attending physician. It just got lost in the shuffle. Because that crucial finding was missed, the death certificate stayed as Guillain-Barré syndrome, and no police investigation was ever triggered.
That one missed handoff, a lost piece of paper, allowed her to continue for 3 more years, get the lawsuit money, marry Dwight, poison him.
It's staggering, isn't it? A complete system failure with fatal consequences. When investigators finally confronted Blanche with all this evidence, the exhumations, Dwight's toxicology, the financial motives, she still denied everything.
What was her explanation?
She claimed that both Taylor and Reed had been depressed. She actually suggested they'd been taking arsenic themselves.
Seriously, that was her defense?
That was her claim. Investigators found it, well, highly improbable, to say the least. She was arrested on July 18th, 1989.
And charged with?
First-degree murder for James Taylor and Raymond Reed, and assault with a deadly weapon for the poisoning of Dwight Moore. Which brings us to Section 5. The trial, and this really unconventional legal strategy that became key to the whole thing.
Okay, let's unpack that. The trial kicks off when?
October 21st, 1990, in Winston-Salem. The prosecution decided to focus the trial mainly on the murder of Raymond Reed. Proving slow poisoning like this is tough. You know, it requires a lot of complex testimony about dosage, timelines, pathology.
Right. And Blanche kept denying everything, like feeding Reed in the hospital.
Yeah, she denied feeding him anything while he was hospitalized. But the prosecution countered that hard. They brought in 53 witnesses.
53?
53. Friends, family members, hospital staff, all testifying they had seen Blanche bringing food and drinks to Reed, feeding him while he was in the hospital. Pretty hard to argue with that.
That definitely undermines her credibility. But you said the key was an unconventional legal strategy. What was that about? It wasn't just the witness testimony?
No, the real game changer, interestingly enough, came from a civil lawsuit that was happening at the same time.
It's a civil suit. How did that affect the criminal trial?
It was brilliant, really. Raymond Reed's ex-wife and his sons sued Baptist Hospital for malpractice. Their claim was based on the hospital's failure to act on those 1986 toxicology results that showed the arsenic.
Ah, the lost report. Okay, so they sued the hospital.
Yes. Now, normally there's a statute of limitations for wrongful death lawsuits. You only have a few years after the death to file. Reed died in 86. The suit was filed later.
So it should have been too late.
It should have been. But the Reed family's lawyers argued something crucial. They argued that Blanche Taylor Moore, who was the executor of Reed's estate when he died,
right,
had fraudulently concealed the existence and findings of that toxicology report.
Fraudulent concealment. That sounds legally significant.
It absolutely is. There's strong legal precedent that says statutes of limitation don't apply if the defendant actively hides the evidence or the cause of action. Because Blanche, as executor, had access to Reed's records and didn't reveal the arsenic findings, likely because she didn't know they existed until later, but her role allowed the argument. The court agreed the statute was tolled or paused.
Wow. So that allowed the civil suit against the hospital to go forward.
Yes. And here's the crucial part for the criminal case. Civil lawsuits have much broader discovery rules than criminal cases.
Meaning they can get more information more easily.
Exactly. In a criminal case, the defendant has strong Fifth Amendment protections against self-incrimination. Searchers require strict warrants. Getting records can be slow and difficult.
Okay.
But in civil discovery, you can compel depositions under oath, issue broad subpoenas for financial records, medical records. The barriers are much lower.
So the Forsyth County District Attorney prosecuting Blanche saw an opportunity here.
A massive one. They essentially made a deal, or at least coordinated closely, with the Reed family's lawyers. They let the civil lawsuit, the one against the hospital, do a lot of the heavy lifting and gathering evidence.
So the family's lawyers pursuing damages from the hospital were effectively digging up evidence that the criminal prosecutors could then use against Blanche.
Pretty much. They used the wider latitude of civil discovery to get records, compel testimony, and basically build the factual foundation for the poisoning case, bypassing some of the stricter constitutional hurdles the criminal prosecutors would have faced doing it themselves.
That's ingenious. Using the civil system's tools to build a criminal case, all because of that initial fraudulent concealment argument.
It was a unique and highly effective strategy. It turned the family's tragic pursuit of accountability from the hospital into a powerful engine for the criminal prosecution of Blanche herself.
And with all that evidence, gathered through both conventional means and this civil suit workaround,
the case against her became overwhelming. The jury convicted her on November 14, 1990. Just 3 days later, they came back with a recommendation for the death penalty.
and the judge agreed.
Yes. On January 18, 1991, Blanche Taylor Moore was formally sentenced to die by lethal injection.
Which brings us to where she is now, Section 6, the continuing saga. She was sentenced to death over 30 years ago. Is she still on death row?
She is. She's currently incarcerated at the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women. Her prisoner number is 0288088. Like all capital cases, her sentence came with automatic appeals.
And those appeals have kept her execution on hold all this time.
Yes, for over 33 years now. And throughout all of it, she has steadfastly maintained her innocence.
What's life like for her on death row, according to the sources?
Well, she apparently keeps busy, writes music and poetry. But she's also faced serious health problems over the years, including needing chemotherapy and radiation therapy while in prison.
And her case didn't just fade away legally, it got caught up in other movements.
Right. In 2010, her case became part of a larger challenge. She, along with 11 other death row inmates from the same county, Forsyth County, filed a motion together. They wanted their death sentences converted to life in prison.
On what grounds?
They filed under North Carolina's Racial Justice Act. This was a significant, though later repealed and modified, state law that allowed death row inmates to challenge their sentences if they could prove that racial bias played a role in their jury selection or the decision to seek or impose the death penalty.
So, challenging the fairness of the system itself, did anything come of that for her?
The legal battles around the RJA were complex and went on for years, affecting many inmates. Her case was part of that broader push. Adding another layer of complication, one of her post-conviction attorneys, David Tamer, ended up being convicted himself.
Of what?
Embezzlement. He misappropriated client funds, including some of hers. And apparently he had his own history of psychological issues. So her legal representation, even after conviction, seems to have been pretty tumultuous.
That's incredible. But maybe the most surprising reaction came from one of her victims, Dwight Moore.
Yeah, this is quite something. Dwight, the husband she poisoned almost to death, the one who suffered permanent damage. He was interviewed by a local TV station, WX8, back in 2010 when those Racial Justice Act hearings were happening.
And what did he say?
He said he had no objections to his ex-wife seeking to have her death sentence overturned.
No objections, after she tried to kill him and left him permanently injured.
That's what he said, whether it was forgiveness or maybe just profound ambivalence after so many years or something else entirely. It's just a stunning statement from someone who suffered so much at her hands. It adds this really complex psychological layer, doesn't it? About justice, forgiveness, endurance.
It really does. Now, a case this dramatic, the preacher's daughter, the poison, the hidden light, it inevitably captures public attention, right? Became part of pop culture.
Oh, absolutely. It hit all the true crime buttons. It inspired a book in 1993 called Preacher's Girl by Jim Schutze. That book, as we mentioned, even suggested she orchestrated the harassment suit and the fires.
And there was a movie, too.
Yes, same year, 1993, a TV movie called Black Widow Murders, the Blanche Taylor Moore story, and it starred Elizabeth Montgomery.
Elizabeth Montgomery from Bewitched.
Yep.
Playing Blanche Taylor Moore. Wow.
Quite the casting choice, yeah. And since then, the case has been featured on numerous true crime shows. The New Detectives, Evil Lives Here, Snapped, you name it. She's become a staple figure in that genre.
She definitely cemented her place, unfortunately, alongside other infamous female poisoners. The methodical nature of it, using arsenic to mimic other diseases, the potential scale of victims. It made her a real-life Black Widow figure.
And from a technical standpoint, her case is still referenced in forensic science and toxicology, particularly when discussing the challenges of detecting chronic heavy metal poisoning.
Okay, so as we wrap up this really deep dive into the tangled life and crimes of Blanche Taylor Moore, what's the final thought? The essential piece of knowledge we should take away from all this?
Well, I think we have to circle back to how justice was ultimately achieved here. Remember how close the truth came to being buried forever? Because of her concealment, sure, but also because of that massive institutional failure at the hospital.
Right, the lost toxicology report from 1986. If that hadn't eventually surfaced, things might have gone very differently.
Exactly. And the only reason it surfaced and became usable in the criminal trial was because of that parallel civil lawsuit, the one the Reed family filed against the hospital.
The lawsuit that used the fraudulent concealment argument to get around the statute of limitations and then used civil discovery to unearth the evidence?
Precisely. So the final provocative thought for you, the listener, to really chew on is this. When you have a situation where criminal accountability is blocked, maybe by the killer's own careful planning and concealment, maybe by systemic failures, like that hospital mistake, does the pursuit of civil justice sometimes become a necessary, almost essential tool for achieving criminal justice?
Something definitely worth pondering. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the pastor, the poison, and the Black Widow.